Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach 2023 season in review. As always, you're, a great supporter, really appreciative of everything you do and all the commentary you provide me, and willing to be on the channel now. So appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate what you do, and I always say this, I feel like some coaches try to pretend maybe they don't watch these or they don't, and I feel like I'm a Division III soccer coach, and so one of the things where I try to learn is from other Division III soccer coaches. So I enjoy hearing what other people have and see if I can steal little tidbits from them as well.
It's the highest form of flattery, right? Theft is the highest form of flattery.
Exactly.
Or something like that. That's what they say. Hey, I'm just going to throw it out to you. From your perspective, by the way, I love the picture over your shoulder. Not the one celebrating, but I guess your daughter?
Yeah, my son.
Yeah, best dad ever. Yeah. Look at that. How outstanding. Anyhow, sorry, got totally sidetracked. Tell me how from your perspective, how do you think the season went?
We had a great season. You're in rarefied air when you're in the Sweet 16, when you're in the NESCAC final. It's funny. I know, as you get towards NCAA tournament time, and maybe if you start to read what people are saying, or you start to look into things and I feel like we maybe even spoken about this in the past, we all celebrate who was the national champion. Mm-hmm. There's 50 other amazing programs, right? Gosh, and who have done incredible things and won a conference championship after not doing it for 5 years, all of those things. But so obviously we were bummed because we thought we had a chance. We thought we were good enough to get to the Final Four, and then you never know. But as it turned out, Washington and Lee came here for the Sweet 16 and played great. We lost 1-0, and it is what it is. And your season ends, and you have some disappointment. But that's our sport. And overall, I thought we had a wonderful season. It was one of my most enjoyable seasons to coach in the 20 years I've been doing this. We have a very unified team, very young team. Nearly our whole team will be back in 2024. And so I thought it was a wonderful season. I think all of our team, a week after the loss, had the same sentiment. And we're having our banquet on Saturday, and I know the guys are really looking forward to being back together and celebrating what was a really good season.
What do you think was your biggest challenge throughout whether it was on the field, off the field? Right, because this is where I guess I'm getting at. You're deep, right? You're one of the teams where I say, right, you're deep. You can make wholesale subs, and there's not a drop off in quality. Where I think most teams can't say that, and so I'm always curious to know, how do you manage that when there's guys who could legitimately say, I could be playing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's when you think of why did we have such a successful season, and how do we make it to the NESCAC final? How do we make it to the Sweet 16? How are we one of the top teams in the country at the end? One of the kind of unwritten pieces is exactly what you just said. Just the group of guys that we had were such great teammates, so happy for each other when they had success. And I mean, you said it, I bet I started 22 different players this year. We genuinely have 2 to 3 players at every position that are good enough to help us win games. And that takes selfless kids who, maybe start for 3 games in a row and then play 20 minutes in the next game. But I think, obviously winning impacts that. And if you're making, kind of rotating like that and you're able to win, that makes it much easier. If you're starting to lose games, then people start to question why they're not in the lineup or whatnot. I think those are some of the kind of the intricate things that you don't always see from the outside of because if you're one of those guys who is only playing 20 minutes a game, but you're thinking I could be an all NESCAC player if he played me 70 minutes, then things can start to go downhill. But I think our group was so incredible this year, and we're just such a joy to coach because of how unselfish they were and how happy they were to be part of the team and how happy they were when their team had success. And I've said that to them about next year, I think that will be one of our greatest challenges. Is we've had a really good year. We only lose 2 or 3 guys. We're still going to bring in a recruiting class of 6 or 7.
Yeah. You're
So
piling
it's not.
on basically, right? You're
Yeah,
piling on to it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. There's not going to be fewer really good players next year. So
Hmm.
can we do the same thing? And while you were happy in that role as a sophomore, like if it's the same when you're a junior, are you equally as happy? So I
Yeah,
think it's really important. Coaches have to manage that, and I think one way that I always try to manage that is if I genuinely have 2 right backs, I'm going to start the other right back every 3 or 4 games.
yeah,
And we did that this year, and I just thought our guys were incredible. And when they got opportunities, they stepped into them so well.
yeah, yeah. I think it helps end of the season, you know? Like I always say, the teams that have 11 guys, 12
Yeah,
guys, by the end of the season, they are battered and bruised, and because they don't have that. But when you have this constant flow of guys coming in, not only emotionally, but physically, they're doing so much better at the end of the year when it starts to matter. And I think it's a big leg up, right? Like, any
yeah.
challenges?
Um, no, I think the challenge came in the off season. This program obviously has high, really high standards and has won national championships and all
Right.
of that. So it's always just competing against that. It's funny. I was actually looking this up the other day. We've existed for 76 years, and we've won 4 national championships, and so it's not like Tufts wins every year, and that's like the thing to you talk about the Messiahs and Tufts,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like you're like, oh, they win every year. Like
No,
that's not
that's not the
actually
way it works.
reality. It is not the way it works. So the 2022 season, we were 8-3-7, and we felt like. So, and obviously that was a lot of ties. It was weird
Yeah,
with the no overtime, I think, for the first time for a lot
yeah,
of our programs. And um, but we were 8-3-7, lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament, and there was like some feeling within our program of like, what a horrible season. And I, as the coach, was like, we played one of the hardest schedules in the country, and we
yeah,
lost 3 times. And so just like overcoming that. I think our guys did an amazing job in the off season. And there was still like this is my third season, just a transitional period of like kind of becoming more of like our team of the
yeah,
guys that are currently here and the guys that have been here with me and my staff. And I thought they did an incredible job of. We just wanted to like chase our own success rather than
yeah, yeah,
chase the history of Tufts men's soccer. And no, I thought we did that really really well. But I think the challenge, yeah, there. It seems silly to say, but other than having to play some of the top teams in the country, every Wednesday and every Saturday,
yeah.
and those challenges, our season like had so few big time challenges, and it genuinely was one of my favorite years to coach.
Wow. So for the record, every time I look behind me, I see the 4 stars
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right
Me
there.
too. They're all over this place.
Like, and I will say, it's funny that you said that because I remember when we talked last year, I was sort of going into it like, oh, he's gonna say it was such a bad year. Because that was
Yeah,
sort of, I was like 8-3-7, like how does that happen? All that stuff. And you came on and be like, it was one of our best years, right? We played the hardest schedule, right? And you were pleased. I don't want to say you were like
yeah,
ecstatic over the moon, but you're like, hey, we made it, this far and this far, and we did really well. But the perception, I just think you look at the numbers, right? And you're like 8-3-7. Oh, that must have been a terrible year for Tufts. Rebuilding, right? So, anyhow, that was my
yeah.
perception. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we always share with our players. Like my assistant played at Denison, I played at Middlebury College, and obviously,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm an old man now. But like I played in 2 NCAA tournaments, and I went to one
Mm-hmm.
of the top schools in the country and one of the top
Yeah.
programs. Like our players are, they're grateful for their experiences.
Right.
And if you're in the NCAA tournament every year for 4 years, like you are one of the luckiest kids that plays college soccer.
It's very
And
few
obviously,
can say that, right? Like very
yeah,
few.
yeah, and
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. Like someday, I hope we pick up that final trophy on the
Yep.
Sunday in December. But like, if I don't know if this may sound defeating, but like if we never do, I still think we're running a really good program, and
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
we're I'm very fortunate to be part of it.
Yeah. I was there a point in the season where you thought like this was going so well, almost? I don't want to say you're hands off, but I would think there's a little bit of like, don't mess anything up. Don't make any decisions that are going to mess things up because it's going so well.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'd say the one point in the season where like things could have gone awry were like our season ends in a really hard fashion, and I think it's the same next year where we end
Yeah.
with Middlebury and Bowdoin as our last two games.
Yeah.
And at that point in the year, Middlebury was probably number one in the country. Bowdoin was
Yeah.
probably number nine in the country. They had lost. Bowdoin at that point had lost once all season, and it was to
Yeah.
Amherst. So, um, and all of a sudden we lose. I think we lost 3-1 at Middlebury.
Three
And so
zero. I actually
three
watched
zero.
that game, but yeah.
3-0, 3-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3-0. And so that's like a point where you're like, oh, maybe the players are going to start to wonder.
Hmm.
And then the best part of the good and the bad of college sports and Division III college soccer is like we played Bowdoin 3 days later on the road in
Yeah.
Brunswick, Maine, and so we couldn't feel sorry for ourselves. And we actually went up there. Um, just don't ask me why, but I decided to play a 3-5-2 for the first time all season, and so we changed things up. And we actually, it's like the big joke with our staff. We actually, from like a tactics and a style standpoint,
Hmm.
it was probably one of the worst games we played all year. Like Bowdoin kind of killed us.
Yeah.
And we won 1-0. But that was like, it was just one of those moments, in college soccer, you're going to have to defend, you're going to have to suffer,
Yeah.
you're going to
Yeah.
have to be under it. And like our guys showed so much resilience that night. Like a Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. in Brunswick, Maine is like
In
that's our joke
October. Yeah.
in October. That's our joke, the can you
Yeah.
do it on a cold Wednesday night in Stoke? Like
Stoke. Yeah.
that's ours. Our cold Tuesday nights in Brunswick, and that showed me like, wow, our kids are tough. Like they just
Yeah.
went after losing 3-0. Bowdoin, I mean Bowdoin legitimately at that point was, I thought they could win the national championship. They had
Yeah.
lost one game all season.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, we had an amazing result, and then we played them 4 days later in the NESCAC quarterfinal.
Yeah.
And the really smart coach that I am, I was like, no, we're changing back to our 4-3-3 because we're way we're way
So
better in
intelligent.
that.
Deep
Yeah,
thinker.
yeah, we're way better in that, and that was probably the best game we had all year.
Uh-huh.
And I'll say that with a caveat. There was a lot of stuff going on in Maine that week, and like
Oh, yeah,
obviously
yeah,
feel
yeah.
terrible. So some of that is I don't know if maybe Bowdoin wasn't at their best, but I
Yeah.
just from our standpoint, I thought in the NESCAC quarterfinal we were unbelievable, and there was like never
Mm.
any doubt we were winning that game. And so yeah, I mean that the Middlebury game where we lose 3-0, like that would have been the point where you're going to start to question yourselves, and
Yeah.
clearly our guys did not.
I watched the Middlebury game where you lost 3-0, and I was like, it didn't make sense to me. I watched the Bowdoin game, and even that game didn't make sense to me. And then I watched the
Mhm.
second Bowdoin game, and I was like, now I'm even more confused because I'm like, where was this team 2 games ago? Right? That's sort of the way I start to think about things.
Yeah.
Because I thought when I watched you play Middlebury, I thought up until that point, I'm like, you guys are legit. Like, I have some maybe talk about it a little bit later, but like I always got the sense that the final third was not as easy for you as I think it should have been. Like the rest of like
Hmm.
defensively in the midfield, I thought you guys are sharp. Then the final third looked a little chaotic, for me at least. But then Middlebury at Bowdoin, I was like, what? Something didn't seem right. But anyhow, I rambled. So maybe we could just keep it. So right, you go from that Middlebury loss to you beat them in the NESCAC. I mean, was there anything going on? Obviously, the events that are so
Hmm.
far beyond the soccer field. That's a big deal, obviously. But from your
Hmm.
standpoint, were there any major differences? Because I actually thought it looked to me like I couldn't understand how you allowed 3 goals in that first Middlebury game, because I thought you guys looked pretty good. You were getting in front of goal, and then you were just let down on what I thought were counters. Really effective, don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm I'm an open book. Like, I probably screwed up how we set up against Middlebury the first time, and
mm,
it took us and our staff like that game to realize that I think our best bet to beat Middlebury was actually to make some changes in how we played, because we're a team that like in general, we want to press high in your half. We
Mm-hmm.
want to have a fair amount of, I'm not possession for possession's sake, but like we want
Mm-hmm.
to try to play out of the back more
Yeah.
often, and we don't. Um, and in the first game against Middlebury, we had all the possession. I think the corners were
Yeah.
16-0 or
Yeah.
something, and the score was 3-0.
Yeah.
And so you look at that, and I'm very much, I'm not a soccer. I'm not a negative soccer guy, but I'm not a soccer purist either. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we complete 500 passes and the other team completes 200 and
They
they
win.
win, I'm not, good for them.
Yeah.
If they complete 10, that's a different
Yeah.
story. But like if
Yeah.
they complete, but so one thing like we realize is, and I should, like, just bad on my part, and I need to be a better coach, but like Middlebury was the most comfortable team in the country this year playing without the soccer ball. You
Yeah.
could, and that's what, we watched like the first game. I think we had like legitimately 65 or 70% of
Mm-hmm.
possession, and we didn't pose any threats to them at
No.
all. And then how do they actually score their goals is on the counter.
Yeah.
And so they actually prefer you to have the ball.
Yeah.
And so in the second game, we sometimes do it when we play a team in Connecticut that's really good as well. We just let them have the ball, and
Yeah.
then we made them try to make the game, and
Mm-hmm.
we said we're just going to play on the counter a little bit more today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we in some ways, from an attacking standpoint, are quite good on the counter.
Yeah.
It's just
You're
not necessary.
lightning fast, right? Like
Yeah,
your transition is pretty one of the best that I've seen. That's for sure.
yeah, we were really fast this year and really good in transition. So in
Yeah.
some ways, we were good at, from an attacking standpoint, good at the
Mm-hmm.
same things that we felt Middlebury was really good at.
Right.
And so we just changed how we played.
Mm-hmm.
And so we let them have a lot more of the ball, and we tried to play on the break more. And,
Mm-hmm.
those games, like, they were one of the best teams in the country for sure. And they
Mm-hmm.
have their goalkeeper was great. Their defenders were
Yeah.
great. They had really good attacking players. Great.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. And I'm not going to say we're better than them. We just beat them 1-0 in the semifinal because it's soccer and one team's going to win. And
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
our kid Danny Yanez scored a really special
Yeah.
goal,
What a
and then
cracker.
and then we hang on. But no, I mean that showed like we could win in a variety of ways, and you feel
Yeah.
like that's maybe a secret to like making a run in the NCAA tournament is having the ability to win a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. It's just popped in my head. How often do you sort of change, loosely defined, change the way you play throughout the season? Or are
Yeah, I'm
you,
pretty.
like, up until that point, 3/4 of the season, the last 3 games, and then to the tournament, are you pretty much playing the same way every time? Or are you?
Yeah, I mean we make slight tweaks every game.
Mm-hmm.
From a defensive standpoint, maybe you're going to try to force the ball into this side of the field or that side of the
Mm-hmm.
field, or you're going to make a team go long, or you actually
Mm-hmm.
want a team to play short. So like those, I'd say we make a fair amount of defensive changes.
Mm-hmm.
We often don't change how we're going to play with the ball, or
Mm-hmm.
very little.
Mm-hmm.
But then obviously when you make like a defensive change, you just say, all right, when they have the ball, we're just going to drop back to midfield.
Yeah.
That changes how you play with the ball, because you're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
getting it. Your starting points are in different areas. So
Right.
I'm willing to change. I think our players are versatile. I think most of them now have come from pretty good youth programs where they've played in
They
different
get it.
systems. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm not a system. I'm like, we don't have to be a 4-3-3 because that's who
Mm-hmm.
I am. Like we're going to play whatever fits our players the best.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll change a bit, but I mean, the only time we changed like
Right.
systems all year was that weird Bowdoin
Yeah.
game, and we won, but it was a bad
You're
coaching
not
decision.
proud.
No, my assistant Mark Waterman, who's one of my good friends, like he
Uh-huh.
crushes me, but he's like, yeah, we won. Okay, all right, move on.
That's great. Um, give me your impression of that Washington and Lee game in the Sweet 16.
Yeah. So we knew they were going to be good. Obviously, Mike Singleton's a really good coach, and they have good players. Like we end up sometimes in the same like similar recruiting conversations.
Mm-hmm.
At least in the early stages for a prospective student. And so they get good players, and he's a good coach, and their program has been really good.
Yeah.
I don't know historically, but since Mike's been there anyway, they've been really, really good. And so we knew it was going to be a really good game. if you do all your scouting and you've seen and heard that they've had all these injuries they're dealing with on the course of the year, and then all of a sudden the starting lineup walks out, and you're like, those two kids haven't played in a month. Apparently they're better, and they had a very good center back.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he genuinely hadn't played in a month, and I think he's a difference maker.
Uh-huh.
And he's a difference maker as much as like the other player who like other guys who then have to play out of position to like cover for that. You feel
Yeah.
like you could maybe like have an advantage from it. And so no, they were. I mean, 20 minutes in the game, I'm talking to our staff. I'm like, this could go either way. Um,
Yeah.
we had we had two chances to score in the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so like that's how you look back on it. Like, oh, if we'd taken one, if we'd taken that chance, like maybe the whole thing is different, but like who knows, obviously. Um, and then the game's 50-50 halftime. Halftime, you don't know how it's going to go. And the soccer, you need good fortune to make runs. And like when you get to the Sweet 16, you're playing Washington Lee. Like those are two of the best teams in the country,
Yeah.
and someone's probably going to need a bit of good fortune to score a
Mm.
goal. And
Yep.
they took a shot from 25 yards. Our center back sticks his leg out, and it
And
is
it,
going to the right
yeah.
post, and it goes into the left post.
Yeah.
And now you're chasing the game. And to be fair, for 10 minutes they battered us after that. Like
Yeah.
they're really good forward. I forget his name, but the striker for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, he had two or three really good chances that most of the year he takes. So he was really, really dangerous. But then the last 20 minutes we kind of like get our bearings. They haven't gone ahead 2-0, and
Yeah.
there were a couple moments like yeah, there were a couple moments. We scored a goal that got called
Got
back for
called
being out
back.
of bounds that like
Yeah.
we don't think it was out of
Was
bounds, but
advanced.
like
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we were going to win the game or deserve Washington
Right.
Lee
Right.
deserve to win the game. Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
You need good. Sometimes you get good fortune, sometimes you get bad fortune, and
Okay.
so no, they were really good, and I felt like the next day I thought they had a really good chance to win, and obviously they did.
Yeah. I I always that's part of the equation when you start getting up there, right? Like to make the run deep to get to the final four and even to win it, you need fortune to smile upon you, right? And consistently almost like it almost seems like you're destined for it. It's not just a one time, I think, and I think that's part of the equation to win it. You almost soccer gods, are they going to shine on us or not? And if they're not, you're going in a much more difficult spot. All right, I do have to ask you: was it a penalty or no?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
It's a penalty if you coach my team, and it's not a penalty if you coach the other team. And
Yeah,
I would be on the other
that's a
like
good answer.
I would be on the other side of it if I was the coach of the other team. So
Yeah,
I've done this for 20 years. Like you get good and you get bad and everything in between, and you feel wronged when it happens to you, and you
yeah,
feel
yeah.
great when it doesn't
Does
happen to you.
yeah? You
But
almost
yeah,
feel like you
there's
got a free gift. Like, oh, okay, that's nice.
yeah, you want to like. It's funny when you don't want the free gift. Like when you get one of those free gifts, like early in the season, and you're like playing a non-conference game, and you're up
Yeah,
3-0, and you get like a soft PK.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
like,
You don't
we don't,
want
I don't
to.
want that
Want
one.
that?
I want one because
Yeah,
you know that's coming back to get you, and
yeah, yeah,
ultimately then you get into your conference games, and
yeah.
one of them comes back. Yeah, so I don't know. It's
Okay,
a PK or it's not
that's
it
fair.
wasn't called, so it's not a PK.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, that's fine.
And
That's
again, like I always say this, do I think it was a PK? Yes. If that's called, do we score it? Who knows? If we do, it's 1-1 and the game's going to overtime. Do we win it? Who knows? Like,
who knows? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely agree. Yeah, yeah. It's not like this was your go ahead moment, right? Like it was no.
yeah,
This is your catch up moment. I I will say I thought it was probably one of the best. That game was probably like if you're going to take a highlight game for the season and say this is what Division 3 soccer is all about. I thought it was that game. I thought it was that good. And I thought from both sides, right? Like again, two of the best teams in the country. You're battling it out on the field. It's tight. You're doing what you do. Washington and Lee is doing what it does, and it's just all around great soccer. All around great soccer.
yeah.
That's
I
what I
really
thought.
I really enjoy those games. Like it's great to, for like our league or whatever to
Mm-hmm.
have an Elite Eight matchups that's two NESCAC teams or something. But like
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy when because we don't often, because we're so limited in our non-conference, only being
Yeah.
able to play 5 games and all of that. Like
Yeah.
we don't play out of region teams ever. And
Yeah.
so I enjoy those games. Some of the rah kind of silliness and nonsense that
Yeah.
happen, what we all do in our NESCAC games, like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
gone.
It's
It's just
gone.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
much more of a soccer game, which I find more like
Yeah.
personally, I find that way more enjoyable as a coach.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, obviously, like I was bummed, really, really bummed for our guys and our staff and myself,
Yeah.
but I do enjoy those games, and it's fun to play those non-conference
Yeah.
opponents that you only see once every 3 or 4 years or
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. I think those are the real tests too, right? Because you're
Yeah,
sort of going in. I don't want to say blind, right? You've done your scouting and all that kind of stuff, but there is a little bit about we don't know enough about the other teams that we are just going to have to be really good at our game. And how do we want to play? And this is what we're going to. This is how we're going to attack. This is what we're going to. You have to be really, really good. And I think both. I'm a big fan of Coach Singleton as well. And actually, I think I have him on next week.
nice.
So big fan, and that I think that's what his way too. It's like I don't know enough about the other team, so I'm just going to have us play as good as we can. And I thought that was on display. Like I said, if you're going to give a highlight for best Division
Yeah,
three soccer, that to me is the example of it. Forget all the any conference games or stuff like that. I just think it's pure at its purest form. It's some of the best soccer you watch.
yeah.
So
I mean this as very much a compliment that I knew they were going to be really good coming into the game,
mm-hmm.
but as that game is developing, I was like, wow, they are actually
They are
better than I
really,
thought they're
really
going to be.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
are better than I thought they were going to be. They
yeah,
could win the whole thing. They were really
yeah,
good.
yeah. I and I was going back and forth about Washington and Lee throughout the season because they had a rough start. They had some
Yeah,
sketchy games, and then they lost to Lynchburg, I think, in the final, the ODAC. But I should have never. They're a team like you can never sort of like just sort of not consider because they're that good. And all it takes is that one game for them to turn it on and be like, yeah, we got our groove, and then
yeah,
they're off to the races. So
yeah,
yeah, I was really happy they made it to the Final Four. I thought that was really
yeah.
great for them. All right, because I always ask because it's almost Christmas, and aside from you sending me all the gifts for my Christmas tree, what do you plan for the spring? Is there anything going on for you guys? I know again, you guys are NESCAC, so I know you got special things. So yeah,
Well, always remember with me, I coached for 16 years outside the NESCAC. So
yeah.
I'm like, I went to a NESCAC school and I coach in it, but I am not like Mr. NESCAC. I think there's like, I think there are so many good teams. Like I love St. Olaf winning the national
Yeah. Oh,
championship.
I thought
Like
that was great.
I just, I don't know, like the NESCAC. Yeah, obviously there's really amazing programs, right? And some of my best friends coach in the NESCAC and
Yeah.
stuff. So, some of my best friends in coaching for sure. But I'm okay getting outside the NESCAC because I know there's other amazing
Right.
programs and amazing coaches and amazing kids who are equally
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
deserving. Um, One major positive is the NESCAC has finally relented, and so we are allowed to have non-traditional seasons. Um, we are not allowed.
Welcome to the 21st century.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll admit, like that's been one of the hard parts for me at Tufts is because I'd coached outside the
Yeah.
NESCAC my whole career. When I got here, I was like, what do we do in the spring? We like can't even see our kids for 5 months,
Yeah.
and so in NESCAC fashion, we're not allowed to do what the rest of the country is, but we're allowed to get 10 days, and so we can train,
Hey,
which is
progress.
which is great. We can't play any
Yeah.
games, but that's okay. At least we get 10 days with the guys, and
Yeah.
we'll really enjoy that. And then our program, we're I'm really excited about this. I've done this with other programs that I've been at, but we're going abroad. We're going to Northern Italy on spring break in March, so that will be
Great.
awesome.
Great. Do you have the
Yeah,
dates so that I can pack appropriately? Like
we do.
That's awesome. It's a
Yeah,
big deal. I hate to say it, right? Like aside from the cultural and all that stuff, the Brainiac stuff, it's I mean it gives you another opportunity to be with them knee deep in a, I think that's really important.
Yep. Yeah, I got to do it as a player, and it's like, again, we want to like chase wins and championships and all of that, but you could win 2 national championships, and I do think if you do take one of those trips abroad, if you're arguably your favorite experience you'll ever have will be that trip abroad with 25 of your best buddies.
Yeah. It's the most memorable, that's for sure, right? Like you just you remember those things, those details about that trip, right? So, all right, Coach. Hey, I'm cognizant of your time. I want to wish you, your family, a very wonderful Christmas, holiday season, all that kind of stuff. Again, really appreciative that you took the time to talk today, and hopefully we can connect at some point. Again, maybe in the spring as you start gearing up for the fall, we can talk.
Absolutely. Now, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you, and
thank you.
Again, appreciate what you do. I always say this, like, there's this weird little caveat of us Division III soccer lovers, and it actually doesn't exist in most of Division I, outside maybe like the Power Five. No one really talks about them, and so it's cool that people care about what we do and ultimately what our kids are doing. It's like shining a light on. Because the kids at this level work really hard and are just great kids who love playing the game for the love of the game. So it's cool what you do.
Well, thank you very much. Really do appreciate it. And I will say, this year again, some great soccer. Like I almost thought the level seemed to notch up just a little bit more than it was last year. I just keep thinking it gets better and better. And lower down the ladder, right? Like I think there's more technical players, there's better ideas about how to play, real coaches on the sideline who are really putting in the effort to make their teams play in a certain way, a certain style. And I thought that was really noticeable this year.
Division III soccer is incredible from where it was like 20 years ago when I played. It's incredible. We have a really good program, and we could lose to any of the top 100 teams now. There's that many really strong teams out there these days.
Totally agree. And I think there's another 100 behind there that are trying to figure out how do we become that 100, right?
Exactly.
I think that's just driving it. So, all right, Coach. Yep. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Bye.